Hi you guys, welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Alexis Lee Trevino and I create faith-based videos along with fashion, lifestyle, vlogs, all that good stuff. I'm so happy that you guys are here today, and I say this in all my videos, but I truly feel like if you came across this video, it was not for just any reason. It was because you're supposed to watch this. You're supposed to maybe receive a lesson from this, or maybe God is trying to show you something. I'm not really sure, but I truly hope that this video encourages you in some way. It strengthens your walk as you are walking with the Lord. And so without further ado, let's just get into today's video. So what kind of stumped me making this video in general is I was listening to a podcast with John Bevere. And if you guys are not familiar with John Bevere, John and Lisa Bevere, they are amazing pastors, speakers, authors, mentors. I learned a ton from them. And so I was listening to one of the podcasts with John Bevere, and he was talking about Joseph's story. I love Joseph's story in the Bible, in the Old Testament. That is one of my favorite books in the Bible. Same with my dad. Like, there's just so much substance there, and I feel like there's a lot of connection that can be made, especially if you are maybe going through a time of suffering, or you're going through a time where you feel like God has put this dream on your heart, but it actually looks like you're maybe going backwards instead of stepping forward into what he has planned for you. Maybe this season kind of looks as like a setback rather than a setup for something greater. And I want to share with you guys Joseph's story to really encourage you if you feel that way, because I know I've been in seasons like that. I've been in multiple chapters like that where I feel like, God, you gave me this dream, or God, you put this on my heart, and actually I feel like I'm going backwards instead of forwards, and why am I in this, and why am I losing these friends, why am I having a hard time financially, like all this kind of stuff, right? And needless to say, I say this and I share this with you guys because there is a time for everything, right? And God's timing is rarely ever immediate. And so hopefully in today's video that you can just feel God's presence and that you feel that you are supposed to be exactly where you are. And yeah, so I'm gonna stop talking and let's just get into the meat of this video because it's good. I have some of my notes on my computer. So for starters, if you guys are not familiar with the story of Joseph, let me just kind of give you an overview. So he is one of 12 brothers. Israel, also known as Jacob, is his father. Joseph was Jacob's favorite son. His father even gave him a special cloak, like a robe, which was like an ornate robe that had a ton of colors, and that made his brothers more jealous. On top of that, Joseph starts having dreams, okay? He particularly has 2 dreams showing him that he is overruling his brothers. And so he shares those dreams with his brothers. The brothers get angry at him, obviously, because it's like if someone's telling you that they're one day going to rule over you, they feel angry towards Joseph. And so Israel sends Joseph to go check on his brothers as they are tending sheep. And it seems like a normal request, but here's what's interesting. That moment set everything into motion. Joseph then finds his brothers. His brothers plan to basically kill Joseph, but then they're like, okay, well, let's not actually like shed his blood because he is our brother. Let's just sell him into slavery. So they saw like a caravan coming. They sell him into slavery. They sell him for, I think, 20 shekels of silver, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, and also they strip him of his robe and slaughter a goat, dip his robe into the blood to make it seem like he was attacked by an animal. So when they go back to their father, they're like, oh, Joseph actually was mauled by an animal, so that's how he died. But in reality, he actually was just sold into slavery, and so now he's in Egypt. So then he starts serving Pharaoh. He's betrayed by his brothers at this point. Joseph is then in Egypt. He's a slave to Egypt. He's a slave to Potiphar. Potiphar's wife is then attracted to Joseph and he wants her to sleep with her. Joseph stayed obedient to God and kept denying it, like saying no. He was resisting the temptation. So then Potiphar's wife told him that So then Joseph got sent to prison. He was in prison for 2 years. And let me just go back to this really quick. Israel Jacob sends his son to go check on his brothers. His brothers then sell him to slavery. At that moment, you guys, you might be thinking like, okay, wait, I'm sorry, but this dude had dreams to rule over his brothers. Actually, God has different plans for him. But in reality, that setback was actually a setup for God to do his thing, like for Joseph to rule over his brothers. If Joseph never got sold into slavery, he would have never ended up in Pharaoh's court. And if he never ended up in Pharaoh's court, he would have never been able to save his family from famine. And so I say this, and also I'm getting ahead of myself, but when when Joseph was in prison, there were a cupbearer and a baker. They were sent down to prison with him. The cupbearer and baker had dreams. Joseph, he had this ability to interpret dreams. And so the cupbearer and baker were asking Joseph, like, what do these dreams mean? His heart could have been hardened. He could have been like, oh, actually, you had a dream. I had a dream once. I had a dream once. And instead, now I'm actually in prison. I'm bitter. Like, he could have been so angry. He could have been so miserable. He could have also turned away from God and slept with Potiphar's wife, but he didn't because he was obedient to him. And so often, you guys, we think of like, if God gave me this picture and automatically I'm in this position of suffering or I'm in this position where it seems like a setback, we so badly just want to blame God. Like, oh God, well, thanks for letting this happen. Like, clearly you don't want me doing this, or clearly your promise that you promised me is never going to be fulfilled. People immediately want to see results. God's timing is rarely ever immediate. And so like what you are doing right now, where you're at right now, you may not be understanding how in the world is this setting me up for preparation? Like, is this setting me up to succeed? But in reality, what looks like a setback is God's preparation for a setup for greater success. And Joseph is not the only story in the Bible that talks about this. It's like Moses when he leads the Israelites out of Egypt. Moses was so inadequate. He was so not equipped to lead Israelites out of Egypt. So he leads Israelites out of Egypt. The Israelites start grumbling, complaining, God, why'd you bring us out into Egypt? Why'd you bring us out of slavery when we're thirsty? We actually have no food. And I think this is something that we can relate to, right? Sometimes it feels like God is kind of allowing things to happen in your life and like it makes absolutely no sense. The job loss, the betrayal, the delay. But what if he's actually not abandoning you guys? And what if he's positioning you for something greater? Like, I know that God does not put us on a bookshelf. He doesn't just place us on a bookshelf and like, oh, well, Susie, she's been kind of disobedient with me. She hasn't been in her prayer closet. She hasn't been reading her Bible. She's been kind of doing some sinful things. And so actually I'm gonna hold off on her. I'm gonna give her like 20 more years and then I'll fulfill the promise that I made to her. In Genesis 50:20, it says, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then do not be afraid. I will provoke for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. So he was talking to his brothers. And now that I'm thinking back to this, oh my goodness, I completely forgot to mention how Joseph became second in command. Either the cupbearer or baker, forgive me, I might say this wrong. I believe the cupbearer was released from prison, and then Potiphar starts having dreams, right? He starts having these dreams, and Joseph can interpret dreams. And so the cupbearer remembers that Joseph was the one to interpret dreams. So Joseph then interprets Pharaoh's dreams. I'm sorry, I keep saying Potiphar. It's Pharaoh. Potiphar's the one that like looks over Joseph. Potiphar is under Pharaoh. So Joseph then interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh lets Joseph come out of slavery. He becomes second in command. There's a huge famine in the land of Israel. So Joseph's brothers and father were going to die. So then Joseph's brothers go to Egypt because that's where they have the supply. That's where they have the food, right? And so Joseph's brothers literally have to ask Joseph for food so they don't die and that they could bring it back to his father, Jacob in Israel. And so then, long story short, Joseph could have been so mad and so resentful towards his brothers, but instead he had open arms. He blessed them. And that's also like, you could probably talk more about that, but I also just want to make another quick point, but like a demotion in the world is actually a promotion in God's eyes. The world operates in instant results, you guys. If you are not doing this, if you are not making this much money, if you are not at this job, if you are not advancing your career like a ladder, if you are not gradually getting higher amongst the ranks, then you are not succeeding. But God doesn't operate on worldly terms, like or earthly terms, okay? He operates in season. There's a time for waiting, a time for sowing, a time for trusting, and a time for reaping. Joseph's time in prison was not wasted. It was just preparation. Wilderness season that the Israelites experienced when Moses led them out of Egypt, right? So they were led out of Egypt. They were told that they would be in the land of milk and honey. Because they're grumbling, because they're complaining, because they're disobedience, they actually prolonged that and they didn't see the promised land until 40 years. So you could prolong your wilderness season. And the initial people from Israel that came out of Egypt, their ancestors were the ones to see the land of milk and honey. Like they weren't, they completely all died off. Even though God had delivered them from slavery, he splits the Red Sea. They still complain about water. They still complain about leadership. They still complain about food. And their complaints revealed a lack of trust in God. And we do the same thing, right? And it's not even just saying like, oh my goodness, Lord, I don't trust you. It's kind of our heart posture. It's kind of like not intentionally saying, okay, Lord, I don't trust you, or, oh, I'm gonna move on my terms, but it's kind of saying, okay, God, what you're doing actually isn't enough. It's not enough for me, so I'm gonna actually take matters in my own hands. So you guys, I say all this because Joseph didn't know when his breakthrough was gonna come. Like he wasn't told when he was eventually going to rule over his brothers. And also I wanna kind of say that he didn't have like an egotistical mentality. Like when you read the book, he was humble also, but he also knew that God's promise would come to fruition. He just didn't know when. I need to wrap this up really quick. I say all this to say because if God said that, he will do it. There's a song where it's like, oh, if God said it, he'll perform it, even though it may not be how I wanted to, but I'm gonna wait on you. That is exactly how we should be. We should have a heart posture of waiting because there is a reason in our waiting. There is refinement, pruning in our waiting. Nothing is ever just wasted, like I've mentioned multiple times. But do not let your heart be disobedient. Do not be disobedient because God has a greater plan for you. You just need to submit to him. You need to trust in him in all your ways. Submit to him in all your ways and he will be the one to direct your path. He will be the one to establish your next steps. And so I hope this video can encourage you that even in the waiting season, even in the waiting period, there is a reason for it. There's always preparation, there's always refinement, there's always fine tuning. You may not understand it, but it's okay because we're not meant to understand everything. Like, it's not our duty to understand. God says, do not rely on your own understanding, but submit to him in all your ways and he will be the one to direct your path. And then in Galatians 6:9, I wrote this down, but I didn't mention it earlier. Let us not grow weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. So again, God's timing is never immediate, but it is perfect. God will reward those who diligently seek him in faith, not when you half seek him or partially seek him. Diligently seek him in faith. Trust in his ability. Stop undermining his ability, because when you undermine God's ability, you are basically saying, okay, Lord, I actually don't believe in you. I have more control. You're not working on my timing. And you start to undermine his ability to work. And when you undermine his ability to work, how do you expect him to move, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Sorry for the dogs. It's really frustrating when I try to sit down and film videos and I have barking dogs. But I hope you guys had a great day, and I hope you guys liked this video. I hope you guys got something out of it. Sorry, I've been scatterbrained. I wanted to script this out way better and like make sure I touch on every single point, but I know I didn't do that because I wanted to kind of just be like free flowing, but as you can tell, I'm literally just stuttering over my words, and I don't even know if I want to post this video or not, but okay. Bye, you guys. Love you.